All right, this is Mad Sports Talk. I'm Sam. I'm joined with Keith Hack from the basketball team. He's played at Medalla in 2006 to 2010. He had a pretty good career here, and he's a really good coach with his records coming from Hawkins. Your what was the Uranus?
Ursinus.
Okay.
Ursinus. Yeah, at
Uh,
Ursinus down in Philadelphia. Yep.
SUNY New Paltz, and he also coached 2 years at N-Trip, and he had 5 1,000-point players, which is pretty impressive because my high school only had about 6 through men's and women's. Um, he remains top 10 in 14 different categories in AMC, like stats for basketball, and here he is. How you doing?
I'm good, Sam. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, so the first question we're gonna just push out at you is gonna be, what does grit mean to you?
For me, grit is kind of the ability to work hard at something for a long period of time and kind of overcoming all the obstacles that may come away, never giving up. Um, I also think a lot of grit is driven by love. If you generally love something, you're going to find a way around those obstacles. But if you don't love it, you're not going to work hard at it. You know, if you don't love it, you're not going to overcome those obstacles that you're going to face along the way. I think that's something we talk about a lot with our team is how gritty we can be, but also know that it comes from a deeper force with love, and you got to love something in order to do it right. So I think for us is overcoming those obstacles.
So, I got over a little of your playing time at Madai and how you were from here from 2006 to 2010, but I really would say your best years would probably be 2008 to 2010 when you guys went back-to-back champions of AMC. What was your favorite moments between those 2 years?
You know, I actually think those 2 years, the best part of them was the 2 years prior. We were young. We kind of all came up together, the kids I play with. And those 2 years prepared us for 2008, 2009, and 2009, 2010. And I think my favorite moment during that all was 2008, 2009, because it's the first time we ever won the AMCC Conference Championship. And kind of doing it here in front of our fans for the first time ever and cutting down the net. I think that was
There's nothing that could compare to it.
no, literally there's nothing. Even we joke about it. I still talk to all the guys I played with, and 2009, 2010 was a bit different for us because we had no expectations in 2008, 2009. Like we thought we'd be pretty good. We didn't think we'd go 21-7, right? But then we get to the senior year, and there's now expectations.
Yeah.
We start off the season, we were 13 or 14-0. We're now ranked for the first time in school history. I think we guys had 16th or 17th in the country. There's expectations now, so it's like kind of more relief winning that title and then going back to the NCAA tournament as opposed to the first year. It was just joyride the whole time. You just kind of enjoyed the ride and everything that happened.
All right. So what was your favorite part about Madaya while you were as a coach and now, as a student, but now as a coach?
I think for me, coming here, I think the comfortability piece of it being more of a smaller setting. I like knowing a lot of people. I like interacting with the same people daily. I like on campus now as a coach. Like it's small, so you have people looking out for you at all times. I think it's cool. You can have relationships with everybody. I think it's cool that this year they implemented that Maz for Maz program, where you're going to different games of different teams, so you're supporting each other. So I think that's always been for me. I think at a bigger school you get lost in the shuffle, and I think here it's more intimate setting where you kind of get to know everybody, your professors, kids on campus, hell, the dining hall workers. All right,
Yeah.
I think that's cool, and I think it's cool that they all ask how you're doing. So I think that's kind of my favorite part about here.
What is your look on the season like every year, every week?
Um, so it kind of depends team to team, right? It depends. Are you older? Are you younger? Um, for us this year, we have a blend. We have 9 newcomers that are freshmen, and that's a lot for a basketball team, right? We only have 18, 19 kids on the roster, so we have that. But we also have a good core of returners in Kendall McGill, Rodney Graves, Travis Sanders, Joy Bile. Like we have some experience, so. I think for us, the outlook is how much better can we get every day, how much better can we every week, but also we're not going to be afraid to play anybody. Like we, at the last minute, played University of Buffalo the other day.
Yeah, I was like, dang, my school's playing UB, and I'm like, honestly, you guys played like pretty good for like against a D1 school.
Yeah, honestly, they're a mid-major that's going to go to. They're picked to win their conference. They should go to the NCAA tournament. Hell, they just played Michigan.
And they only lost by like 8.
Yeah,
which is
close game.
They're like Michigan's one of the my book's best defense in that like
in NCAA.
Yeah,
they're insane, and they're number 5 in the country for a reason, right? So, giving the opportunity to let them have a chance to play those games and play a game on ESPN, have a stream so it's something they can talk about. And if we played, our normal rotation that we normally did, it could be a little bit closer. But I was extremely proud of how they competed. I'm like, guys, you do that every night. We can have a special season here. So to give them those opportunities, so we'll go play anybody anywhere. It's kind of
which I'm like, it still like brings like another like factor on like coming up against like teams in the AMCC where they like this team just put up 70, almost 60 to 70 points against a Division I UB school that has gone to like the March Madness multiple times.
Made runs too. They
yeah,
Arizona a couple of years ago.
Which I'm like, they took down DeAndre Ayton with no guys over 6'9". So I'm like,
insane.
How can you like even be like not happy about what you guys done?
I was actually more impressed with the defensive piece. Was fine because let's face it, like they're bigger than us. They're going to get rebounds. They're going to have rebounds. They're going to do different things that we just physically can't do. But for us to put up almost 60 points against a team like that, with so many new kids and so many different laps. Hell, there's one time I looked out there, I had Kendall McGill out there with 4 freshmen, and I'm like, well, we're subbing in freshmen. They're subbing in more scholarship players in different settings. So it is kind of an interesting dynamic.
Which you gotta like put that in perspective. Most of like every person on your team isn't like getting like a full ride to like UB. Like
no.
They're like these kids. These like UB players are like one of the top people in like NCAA or some like people get drafted. Like Tyler Ennis got drafted by them. Yeah. Like Raheem Christmas was in Syracuse, but he still like was.
Well, they have guys this year. A kid, Janethan Williams, who's from Rochester, a local kid, just put up 33 against Michigan the other day. He has a chance to go get drafted.
Yeah,
so
which is like
cool
insane.
Because the guys, at Division III, right? Like we don't have scholarships, and you guys are doing it all because like you love your sport, right? So. Our job is to predict how much better our kids are going to get over 4 years. And now, sure, our goal is to recruit kids that fit the Division III mold, but we want them to be scholarship-level players by the time they're juniors and seniors.
Which, hey, even if, like, they're, like, a freshman or, like, sophomore and they start, like, insanely putting up numbers, they can either go up to, like, a bigger school, which is, like, sometimes some people's goal. Because that's, like, one thing that annoys me about, like, people going into college sports. Like, if I'm not going to Division I, I'm not going to do anything, which is, I'm like, dude, you could get a scholarship in like 4 games.
Well, you saw, that kid Duncan Robinson plays for the Heat?
Yeah.
He was a Division III kid. He played Division III at Williams College in Massachusetts. Well, his coach leaves after his first year. He ends up going to Michigan, becomes 6th man of the year, plays, now he just signed a $70 million contract with Miami Heat.
Which I'm like,
it's insane.
It all takes like patience and work. Which
grit. Let's go back to grit.
It's like. Literally, sports is just definition of grit and just working your like butt off every single day.
It's insane. It really is what you put into it, right? Like if you're gonna work really hard at it, you can be really good at it.
Which it doesn't matter which sport, which like is the best thing about sports. Mm-hmm. No matter how much what you put in makes you the end product, which is it's literally the greatest sport like anything on earth.
You literally can't cheat it. You get what you put in. You can't cheat the game, whether it's baseball, basketball, soccer, football. Doesn't matter. You literally, if you don't get in the cage and get swings in for baseball, you're not going to be a good hitter.
Yeah.
If you're not working on your technique in soccer when you're going on free sets, guess what? You're not going to be very good. In basketball, if you're not working on your shot, guess what? You're going to be in trouble. That's crazy.
Which I'm like, the best thing is like baseball, basketball. They're like team sports. Mm-hmm. Like one person won't, unless you're in the NBA. There's some people that carry their whole team, but like in like smaller like schools and like colleges, it's a team sport. So like it's the best thing on earth. You get like
look at Mike Trout for the Angels, right? Guy's been one of the best players maybe in baseball for the past 7-8 years.
Oh, he's undeniable.
His team can't win,
and they still bring in people that like should be getting them to the playoffs, and they just can't win. Which I'm like, Mike Trout's like the key example about like team sports, where like this man's putting up 40 to home runs a year and 30 stolen bases. Like you can't.
He's a triple crown guy. He's literally almost a triple crown guy every year.
He's gonna be in the Hall of Fame, though, matter of doubt.
First ballot, right when he retires, right when he gets out, he's in. But his team, like, when's the last time he played in the postseason?
He hasn't.
It's crazy.
I don't even think he has, which is insane. I think the last time may have been with Albert Pujols, but
it might have been a quick one.
It might have been like a wild card, but I'm like, if you look at like the Tampa Bay Rays this year, they had no one, like nobody names, and they go to like the almost second round. They lost to Houston.
They lost to Houston,
which
exactly. But Tampa Bay shouldn't be competing with Houston, Boston.
Tampa Bay has the lowest money spent in the last 10 years. So like, just
team. It's all about team.
When you grow with people, and that's like the best thing about D3. When you grow from people from freshman all the way to senior, that's where your team like excels.
Explodes, and that's what I had when I was here, and that's I think what we have right now with the 9 kids we brought in. They're close. They work their butts off. They're in the gym all the time. They're gonna grow together and have an awesome career.
I mean, like when I'm always in Sully and in the gym, and I always see your team practicing, which I'm like, even if it's like 1 or 2, they're still shooting. I'm like, that's the cool thing, because
it is, right? Because like you got to be careful here, because it's also Division III, right? They're not on a scholarship, so they got to do it their way. But the fact that they have this hard work instilled in them right now is going to lead for the culture down the line when more kids come in to the family. They know this is what we do. You do extra work.
It sets like a structure,
it does.
which
it does.
is like the good thing about D3, because the team makes their own structure, not like
it's not the coach.
It's not like the top people that make it for the people, which is the best part, because they can make it their way, and then they could implement it into the game, which makes more chemistry, which I think is cool, like insane about it.
That's why I keep coaching. It's fun to see different groups kind of interact.
We're just gonna. So, why do you love basketball? Because like a lot of people that play multi-sports or stuff like that, they choose one sport over the 3 or 2 or how many they do. But like, why did you choose basketball?
So it's actually funny. Basketball wasn't my best sport. Soccer was. I was a pretty decent goalkeeper, and my high school that I went to was known for soccer. And I didn't love it. I liked it. I didn't love it. Basketball, I love. There's something about the flows of the game, right? Because in soccer, not always the best team wins. Like you can have a team pack the box, and it might be 0-0, and you could outshoot them 35-2, and not get a result. Basketball, there's always going to be a winner and a loser, and I think that's what draws me in is the ebbs and flows of basketball, the team aspect. I love. I grew up. My dad took me to a couple games when I was younger. We used to go. I grew up an hour north of New York City. We're diehard Nets fans, so we used to go to the Nets games when I was younger.
You must love the Nets right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through some bad times with the Nets, but now I'm in some great times with the Nets. But it came back to that, and I just kept falling in love with it. And when I was younger, I was fortunate my dad put in a basketball court in our backyard, and it's ever been a love ever since. And I can't imagine. Like last year was hard for me.
Yeah.
COVID, like not doing what I'm used to doing for the past 15, 20 years I was like. My wife was ready to kill me. Like, she's like, "Get out of the house already!" Like, I need basketball, and now here we are. So, I think that's kind of why I love it.
So, now that I know about your favorite teams, the Nets, who's like in the NBA, like a team that you look at and like think like, if we like, not like
could emulate, like
yeah,
emulate if I could,
because I know like. My high school coach always said we need like the ball movement of like the Warriors or San Antonio Spurs, because the Spurs were insane with their ball movement and
for years.
Insane. Like that's why they won so many games, because people were just always open.
Right.
Who's now like one of those teams that like.
So obviously we want to emulate a little bit of the Warriors' mantra of keep the ball moving, because like when you have at the time a couple years ago, right, when they had Durant, Curry, Klay Thompson.
Well, arguably one of the best
teams. Like you're not going to see a better team assembled. Like you can even go back to the Bulls. That Golden State team had more firepower, right? And they kept the ball moving. Great. But if there's a team I can emulate, so offensively we want to emulate that. But for me, I really love the way the Miami Heat are set up and structured. I love this kind of blue collar approach they have, and it's workmanlike. And I'm a diehard Jimmy Butler fan.
I like him too.
He works so hard.
He's insanely like his work ethic is insane, but like I just don't like that he has like an attitude problem, and like that's like his struggle right now because
That's his thing, right? Because he got kicked off of the Timberwolves,
and
right?
then he got
the Sixers. He had some problems with Ben Simmons.
and then like I think it was last night or 2 days ago when Jokic
fouled
which I'm like
Morris. Yeah.
which I'm like if you think of, like if you really watch that over, it could have been like worse because Morris did like bump into him first on purpose, and because you don't walk in front of somebody and just stop and lay your shoulder into it.
Right.
Which I'm like, even like I watched the TNT show with Shaq and Barkley.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, it was perfectly fine. Which because I'm like, it's a different age now. Which if it happened back then, it was just like, oh well.
Yeah.
And I understand why they're mad about it, but I'm like, you can't just expect nothing back coming at you.
Of course.
And I'm like, it's just unbelievable that it's still like getting talked about. But
Yeah. Well, they have nothing to talk about right now, right? Football is in between right now, in between the week. But I think the cool part with the Heat, though, when you think about it, is they have this work ethic. When you go down there, like Pat Riley is one of the few guys in the league that mandate. They have like a body fat percentage test, where if they're over 6% body fat, those guys get fined until they get under day. I don't know what it is day by day, but I think it's a commitment of like they just work and work and work, and they're relentless. They don't give up.
I mean, like, look at, I think it was not last year, but the year before that, when they were projected to get swept by the Bucks, and then they swept them, and I'm like, I'm a Bucks fan, and I was like pissed off the
You're
whole.
a Bucks fan?
I am.
You ripped my heart out.
See, I'm a Bucks fan because I played NBA 2K in like 2014.
Yep.
And that's when I only used the Bucks all-time grades because Kareem was probably the best card in the game, and I dropped like 80 on my friend 40 times, and that's when I started liking him. And then Giannis came, and then his brother came.
Yeah.
And I liked the Bucks because they didn't really bring in people because their main two duo, Middleton and Giannis, they came up the same draft class, and they have developed together, which I'm like, they're arguably one of the best duos. Cause
they might be. How can you say they're not the best duo right now?
Well, I'm just saying arguably because there's people that are like diehard like fans of their own because
like Kawhi and Paul George,
or like
LeBron and
just Curry and Thompson, but like they haven't played for like 2 years in a row, and
Durant and Harden.
Which I'm like, still those two guys are just ISO people that don't like look at Middleton and Giannis, best pick and roll or best just pick offense ever. Like they literally either have Giannis that's going to the rim, or Chris Middleton just pick and pops. And
you know what's funny about that? They played a lot similar in the finals this past year to the way the Lakers used to play with Shaq and Kobe, right?
Yeah.
Giannis would dominate the whole game, but you need a guard to close the game out. So then Chris Middleton would take over.
The thing was, everybody's like, Chris Middleton can't play in the first 3 quarters, which I'm like, listen, I'm okay with that because he drops 35 in the last 2. Yeah. And I'm like, if you just keep him going, if he just makes if he scores 10, 14, and then you guys really put your defense playing, and either it's fast break or it's like just design plays that get him open. Like, look at when they played the Heat and they brought it to overtime, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Like, Middleton had like 45 points in the last 2 quarters, and Giannis was injured. Like, this guy is one of the most underrated people in the league.
No question. He's also one of the best two-way players in the league.
He's insane.
And it's good that he won I'm glad they won the championship because Giannis got way too much unfair criticism, but Middleton's got way too much unfair criticism. He's not flashy.
Which I'm like, even right now, like, Giannis is like shooting threes now, like just pop-up threes, which I'm like, everybody are saying he can't win an MVP or like win a championship because he can't shoot a 3-point.
Guess what? He's doing it now.
I'm like, you have a guy that is shooting 47% from 3-point. That is his duo. Mm-hmm. And then you have literally the like starting five is insane.
It's insane.
Like,
they need when they get Dante DiVincenzo back, like with Drew Holiday and Middleton.
like look at
Giannis,
Connington. He's
Connaughton.
6'6" and he's out rebounding like centers.
Well, how about the kid Jordan Nwora?
Yeah, he's from Amherst.
Yeah, and his dad's the coach at ECC.
He's
really good. He's taking a jump.
I think he dropped like 32
The other
2
night.
days,
Yeah,
and I'm
insane.
like, it's just crazy because like people don't realize that like Buffalo does like send out good people. Like there's in any sport really. Like
get them all over. They just end up going to prep schools now.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just kind of the kick of where things go. Like let's go to prep school, let's play better competition, get noticed by different guys.
Which I'm like my high school. There's one person that played for the Bears and the line, and his name is John Kling, and then he played in the XFL.
Okay. And it's good that he won I'm glad they won the championship because Giannis got way too much unfair criticism, but Middleton's got way too much unfair criticism. He's not flashy.
Which I'm like, even right now, like Giannis is like shooting threes now, like just pop up threes. Which I'm like, everybody are saying he can't win an MVP or like win a championship because he can't shoot a 3-point.
Guess what? He's doing it now.
I'm like, you have a guy that is shooting 47% from 3-point. That is his duo. And then you have literally the like starting five is insane.
It's insane.
Like
they need when they get Dante DiVincenzo back, like with Drew Holiday and Middleton.
like look at
Giannis,
Connington. He's 6'6" and he's out rebounding like centers.
Well, how about the kid Jordan Nwora?
Yeah, he's from Amherst.
Yeah, and his dad's the coach at ECC.
He's
really good. He's taking a jump.
I think he dropped like 32
The other
2
night.
days,
Yeah,
and I'm like, it's just crazy because like people don't realize that like Buffalo does like send out good people. Like there's in any sport really. Like
get them all over. They just end up going to prep schools now.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just kind of the kick of where things go. Like let's go to prep school, let's play better competition, get noticed by different guys.
Which I'm like my high school. There's one person that played for the Bears and the line, and his name is John Kling, and then he played in the XFL.
Okay.
And he played there for the year, and then he got signed by I think the Washington football team, and he literally taught my health class, and I'm like, this guy literally, his dad took over because he had to go play football, and it was insane because he's like 6'7", 295 pounds, and he's like insanely like he's good. Like I think my school won every year with his like team for like the championship. Like, it was insane, and we're like a super small school. Like
Right.
we only have like our football team had like 30 kids on it. So I'm like, there was one kid that ran for 2,000 plus yards and played cornerback, and I'm like, you don't see that at like those bigger schools.
No.
Which I'm like, in the playoffs he had a blocked kick that he returned for a 85-yard touchdown. And I'm like, this kid's going next play back on the field. I'm like,
It's insane.
It's insane. But so like, what does like your team like struggle with, or like what do they like excel at? Because I know like their defense is like pretty good because.
So yeah, I think things that we can get better at, for sure, would be one. You have young guys is learning every day that you have to go 100% every rep, every drill you do, and the communication piece, right? I think those are the two biggest things that we not struggle with, but are constantly working on, hitting home. Is like, it doesn't matter. Like yesterday, we had a slow start to our practice because today we play our first game. Well, just because we have a game tomorrow doesn't mean we're gonna have a slow practice today. So they kind of get yelled at for a second or two to refocus. But I think the thing they do excel at, better than any team I've been around most likely, is when it is time to compete, they will compete. And they will get after each other. They will fight tooth and nail to win anything. So having that is a great problem to have because I know no matter what, we're gonna have some losses this year, but it ain't gonna be because of a competitive problem, right? There's gonna be some days where you just don't shoot the ball well. Okay, that happens. But if we're competing as hard as we can for 40 minutes, we're gonna win more than we lose. And I really like the group we have, and I think they're gonna be, tough to beat this year.
Did you play the Rochester team, or was that
We played Rochester last year.
last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because that's in I think. Yeah, it was last year, but I was looking on the schedule and it said that I don't think it updated.
Yeah.
Because I'm like this is really bad, but
No, we played Rochester last year during like 6 exhibition games or whatever we had. And Rochester's traditionally one of the best teams in the country for
Yeah.
Division 3. And we went in there
I mean like
played really well.
I do have like the stats up, and I'm like, you guys really like put a heat to them because
We were up 2 with 20 seconds left, and then they made it basket to tie it. We missed. We go to overtime. We lose in overtime by 6.
yeah.
And I'll tell you what, we didn't shoot the ball well, but we forced them into 22 or 23 turnovers, I think it was. And I was when I saw that game, knowing we'd have a majority of that team back, I was like, okay, this team could be special. Now, how do we eliminate the days where we're not playing a Rochester and we're playing a lesser team? How do we come out with the same competitiveness to beat them? Are we consistent enough to do it day in and day out? And that's the biggest challenge for our group.
I mean, like, I know you guys aren't like the biggest team, but you guys put up like 37 rebounds against them.
Yeah,
which I'm like,
we're not big.
which I'm like, honestly, like, playing small ball isn't that bad, honestly.
You need tough kids.
Yeah.
You need tough kids that are going to go and they're not afraid to mix it up. And we have tough enough kids that are going to go fight for those balls. Now, we're not going to get every one of them, but our trade-off with the rebounding piece is how many turnovers can we create. Our goal is, like, can we get 20 turnovers a game?
I mean, hey,
by
you
playing small
did
ball?
put up 20 turnovers, which is
Yeah, so we did what we wanted to, and that's, I think, why we're in the ball game, because we're within the rebound margin we need to, and we forced them into 20-something turnovers. So
which I'm like, I'm looking at Ronnie Graves' stat line right now, and I'm like, he really put a hurt on their defense because I'm like,
what do you have? I think he had 33.
333,
He came off the bench.
which I'm like, you can't ask for more off a bench player.
Well, no, trust me, Ronnie's one of those kids. You question, like, why is he here from talent level? Because he has days where, like, he shouldn't be in Division 3. And there's some days where he's just not always locked in, and that's what happened to him 2 days before he played Hilbert, and that's the consistency piece, right? He didn't play well. We took him out. Actually had to bench him for that second half. I told him I wasn't going to start him the following game because he didn't warrant it based off of work ethic stuff. Well, he came in and was phenomenal off the bench, obviously 33, but he's also phenomenal the rest of the way. Like, Ronnie's a special kid where you can connect with him and get him going, and when he does, he's the best player on the floor almost all the time. So it's nice knowing whenever I go in a game between him, Kendall, and Travis, and Girari, I got players that I feel are the best on the court majority of the time.
Which I'm like, when you have like that one person that you can rely on, it like helps when you could put that piece together and your offense just explodes, which is nice.
Yeah, it's nice having dudes that you can rely on.
Yeah, any sport, and
Absolutely.
like,
It's like having a hitter knowing that, in the 3-hole he's coming up, he's batting 330. You'd rather have that guy all the time.
which like it's hard to find right now because baseball's like averages are going down.
Yeah, no doubt. I get it.
I mean, what you guys got throwing 104 and hitting every single spot they want, which is like,
Those who watch the majors, right? Like, now it's the bullpen games that come in. And it's impossible to get a hit.
yeah.
Guys paint corners. Guys that throw, like you said, 100.
Look at Jacob DeGrom. Like,
It's impossible to hit anything.
he had a
And I'm a diehard Mets fan.
like, if he didn't get hit this year, like hurt this year, he would have had the best season as a pitcher because he had a .69 ERA, which.
He had more RBIs and giving up earned runs.
And the sad part is he had like for like the first like I think like 2 weeks of play, he had like more hits than like 95% of the team on the Mets. And I'm like, if anybody's listening that doesn't know like baseball terms, like .06, like .69 is
You're not touching it.
that is like the 1% of like top people pitching all time.
All
like
time.
he
You go
is
back through every-
that is the best ERA of all time, I think.
You're not gonna
And
go look back. You're not gonna.
this guy literally like hits home runs too. Like if
Home
he
runs, he has 5 different pitches. He's a different cat.
like he has a curve like a slider that's like 94 miles per hour and like people can't hit 72 miles per hour sliders or curveballs. Like, he averaged like 12 strikeouts a game, which is absolutely insane. But I hope the Mets get better. As a New York Yankees fan, I'm like, I hope.
You're a Yankee fan?
Yeah.
All right, I'm a Mets fan.
I got the hat.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, the Mets, you just count for one every 5 days. If they can get Syndergaard back, and you got another pitcher, but they need some hitting.
I mean, like,
they score 3 runs a game.
Yeah, which is like,
It's terrible.
You can't win games if you can't get your bullpen to have some leverage, which I'm like, that's the same thing with the Yankees, though. When you spend so much money and you just have guys hitting below like 250, it's just mind-boggling. And
it's almost like the Stanton, right? Because Stanton got hot.
Stanton,
but he's the enigma where he goes cold for a month.
See, like, Stanton to me isn't the problem. The problem is when you have like just straight, you overbuy on people. Like, you shouldn't be paying Garrett Cole that much money.
No.
Nobody's gonna like pay him that much unless you're the Yankees, because we're like the team of making contracts stupid. Like, Jacoby Ellsbury shouldn't be getting paid for the last 2 years.
Okay, Bobby Bonilla.
Okay,
right,
well,
for another 13 years.
Well,
right?
Jacoby Ellsbury did go and play for the Red Sox for like a year after.
True.
And that made no sense because I think everybody that's a Yankees fan knew that was going to happen, and because he was always a Boston guy, which I don't like the Red Sox at all.
I get it. You're a Yankees fan.
Which I'm like, which is like another thing. Like, all these small teams are still making runs. Like, look at the Braves. It's like a really comparison to like how basketball teams build up chemistry. Like, that team like literally came from the minors all the way up to the.
And they lost their best player, Ronald Acuna, and still went.
The man tore his ACL and was on the field still.
Insane.
Which he arguably is could have been MVP.
He could have been MVP, but they also talk about a discount. They got him 8 years, $100 million. Guys like that today go for like $250, $300.
Guys like that today, the Yankees are paying like
they'll go $400
billions.
They'll go Bryce Harper on it, right?
Which I'm like,
insane.
It's crazy to think like all these like younger kids are putting up insane stat lines, and like it's like a new age for like sports, because like look at like basketball, you got LaMelo Ball or like Anthony Edwards. That guy's insane.
I don't know. I think he had 48.
48.
They almost let him all the way back, and they were getting blown out too.
And told Curry he was gonna get 50 to his face, and I'm like,
nowadays you see guys come in, and you're like, we got guys doing something we've never seen before.
I mean, like, look at Zion, which I don't like. Not necessarily I don't like him, but I don't like how he's one of the most overhyped prospects or rookies ever. Like, he hasn't, and he just gained more weight. Like, Shaq and Barkley called them his baby, and I'm like, that's not something you want to be told by Shaq and Barkley, because
I agree.
They're one of the 2 largest people. And
Shaq's the largest human being probably I've ever seen in real life.
I think the one guy from Sacramento, Simbilar,
yeah,
he was 335 pounds.
I think he was like 7'7".
Yeah. I'm like, he's a center, but like, you ain't going anywhere.
Right.
Which I'm like, even like, if you look at Bobo, that man's 7'1", I think, or 7.
He's shooting threes.
Yeah. Like, he's insane because he could dribble.
That's why when I watch Kevin Durant, I'm just amazed. He's 7. He won't claim, but he's 7 feet. And the other night, they're playing Orlando, and he scores 30 points on 12 shots. He was 11 for 12.
Well, look at him when he played against the Nets series.
The Nets Bucks.
Yes, that was such a great series.
The
like
games he had, him and Giannis going back and forth made that series.
Like that game, I think it was the one when he tied it, but his foot was too big.
Yeah, and bro, like a half size of the shoe. They had a half size shoe difference.
And I'm like, I was in my car listening on Sirius, and I'm like, I was coming home from work, and I was watching it while I was working, and I'm like, I was like so mad because I thought they said it was a 3.
Yeah, at first I thought it was
And I was like, are you kidding me? Because that would have, like, changed the whole series.
Well,
And then I'm like, they said it was a 2. I'm like, oh, my God, I can't even watch the game because I don't have the game on. Like, I don't want to leave the car because then the game's going to keep going. So I'm just sitting in my mom's car just listening to Sirius XM. And I'm like, then I just hear, oh, the Bucks just took over in overtime. I'm like,
I honest to God, I still can't forgive Joe Harris for missing so many open threes.
oh, my God.
Too, because that later was Giannis, and I think it was Chris Middleton.
Joe Harris is one of the best three-point shooters, and he just
couldn't make him in the
like
last 4 games of that series.
it's insane because like basketball is one of those sports like any person can have an off day. Like look at James Harden right now.
Yeah.
Like I hate Harden as a person because not a person, but like the way he yeah.
I get it.
Because like I can't stand people that look for the easy way out on like the hard fouls. Because when you look at Brook Lopez or like Brook Lopez is one of the like he just goes for the basket when he's in the like paint, and he'll get like punched in the face and stuff. No fouls, but when you have like guards and stuff that like bump into people for a foul, and I'm like, why are you looking for a foul where you have the skill set just to shoot and get open?
That's because the NBA allowed it for so long. Like, these guys were just finding ways to make it work.
We're like, KD's the guy that like he'll score no matter what.
Yeah, you can throw him in any situation, any error, and that dude's a walking 30 points a game.
I mean, like PJ Tucker tried to cover him. He did for like the first.
PJ Tucker made it hard.
Yeah.
That's all he did. He warmed up physically, but at the end of the day, PJ Tucker had an interview come out the other day in JJ Redick's podcast, and he's like, I told my guys, he's going to get 40 or 50 points. My job is to make it physically hard for him.
Which I'm like, that's like a lot of people saying like when they go up against like the top 4 superstars, like when you go up against LeBron or like,
you're not stopping him.
Which I'm like, the only people that could really stop them is the other 4 superstars. Which like,
and you're not going to stop a great player. Like you will never stop. Take any 4 players in any sport. You're not going to stop them the whole time.
Yeah.
You're just trying to make it hard.
You're just trying to like if you play him 10 times, you're just trying to lower that percentage of him getting the advantage over you, which basically is sports. You try and like take advantage of the other person so you can.
Bill Belichick take away the best option.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what you're trying to do. Or in our case, sometimes you're just like they're too good. We're gonna let that guy get 30 points, but we're gonna shut everyone else down.
As long as you shut him, like I think it was basically like what the Bucks did against the Nets when KD was the only person healthy. That's literally what people do to the Lakers too. Like, I don't care what anybody says. The Lakers aren't going to the finals because they have no bench people, and they can't stay healthy.
They can't stay healthy. They're older. They don't have shooting. I still think, I know it's not going out on a limb. I still think the Warriors are going to come out of the West this year.
I mean,
they get Klay Thompson back.
That Poole guy, he's good.
Poole, really good.
And then
the young kids, stuff Andrew Wiggins. Klay Thompson comes back.
I mean, like they're still producing like really well. Isn't Wiseman still playing?
Wiseman, I think they're 8-1 or 9-1.
They're 9. I think 8-1 because I think the Suns were the.
So, yeah, whatever they are, they have the best record in the league.
Which I'm like, people get mad about like Curry like dropping 40 on himself. Like, look at his roster.
I know.
They're so injured right now that he's like the only person that like can score. But like Jordan Poole's still like he's complimenting him, but Curry's still dropping like the most, which makes sense. But he's still getting that assist.
He's filling in until Klay Thompson gets
which I'm like, I think he said 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Which I'm like, if you could do another 17 3-pointers or like 14, that'd be like
insane.
Which I'm like, I mean, like when you have those guys that could just complement each other, like your team's unstoppable.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's like putting a puzzle together, right? Like you want to find guys that fit. You can't have 5 guys that can just break you down off the dribble. You need to have guys that can shoot the ball, the guys that can rebound the ball,
but
guys that can still get their shot off the ball.
You can't just rely on the starting 5 either.
No, you need a bench.
Because
especially in the NBA season, right? You might play you might play Kevin Durant every minute of the game in the playoffs. But if you want to get him to that moment in the playoffs, you better have a bench that can help you out.
Just look like I'm just bringing back the Bucks again, but like they had one of the best benches because you had like people that could rebound, People that can score.
Yeah,
People
Bobby Porter's come off the bench. He was a valuable asset.
like Bobby Portis could start on anybody else's team.
Because he
Like-
brings energy all the time, right? You go back to those Miami Heat teams with LeBron James. Ray Allen was massive.
Yeah.
That team. Mike Miller. They had guys come off the bench that were just crucial.
Ray Allen probably had the most clutch shot in Heat history, which
Hell, it could almost be in the NBA Finals moments. That's up in the top 10.
I mean, if you take like Damian Lillard's every single playoff game he ever played, because that man,
Everything he does is awesome.
didn't he like? I think he like did the same shot against Paul George like twice.
Yeah, same. When they were in Oklahoma City.
And then
And recently, or last year or something like that, I think they did it again.
yeah, when it was like the same like half court shot,
Logo Lillard. Right?
and I'm like, this is just stupid because
The only other team you can also you can throw the Spurs in there because like when they bring Manu Ginobili off the bench,
yeah,
we're talking about arguably one of the greatest international players coming off the bench.
look at like Lou Williams,
Awesome.
this sixth man of like every year,
You go
and
back to Jamal Crawford when he was playing, like he'd be a huge piece with his Clippers or Lou Williams, or he was at the time. Or Atlanta.
I think he played on the Clippers for a
Lou
while.
Williams was on the Clippers too. I think
Yeah.
they had him and Crawford.
Which I'm like,
over time.
yeah, they weren't like putting like they weren't like winning every year though, but they were just they got to like the playoffs. That's like
plus semifinals, conference semifinals, and it's a crapshoot at that point.
see, I like what the Knicks are doing right now. They're like
They're tough. They got something going in New York. And plus, there's nothing better than Garden in basketball.
my sister actually works for Anheuser-Busch in New York City, and she gets free tickets to like Madison Square Garden every week that she could choose out of. And I'm like, you have to go to a New York Knicks game. Like, it's like if you're in New York City and like you live there, you have to go to either the Nets or the Knicks. Like,
Of course.
and she's been to like all the hockey games and stuff. I'm like, you just have to like
Go to
a
a
Knicks
That
game.
experience in MSG is second to none. It's like a college atmosphere. It's nuts.
I'm like, all my friend, like my one friend that like I went to high school with and like grew up with, he's a diehard Knicks fan, and like it's to the point where he won't talk to people while the game's on, and he'll just stare at the TV, and like when I think 2 days ago the Bucks played the Knicks,
yeah.
and I texted him after the game, and he said he literally like Knicks fans are like ruthless too, like they will like block you on stuff and like I'm like, dude, it's just a game, but
right.
they think about like every game's like
It's the end of the world.
which like though like against Atlanta,
Yeah.
they were going off on Trae Young, and I'm like, guys,
Trae Young brought that on himself too, though.
I'm like, well, Trae Young
He wants to be that guy. He wants to be that guy to take on the villain role, right? Like,
which I'm like, you don't try and take on the villain role with one of the most like fan based teams.
they're a bunch of savages.
Yeah, I mean any New York person
Yeah.
is a savage because whenever I was there, they're like, they don't care if you're walking straight; they'll go right through you.
No question. New York's different. It's similar to like Philadelphia. You gotta be tough, thick-skinned.
I mean, like,
city.
If you go to a Yankees game, they're probably the most ruthless fans ever.
Yes.
I mean, they threw baseballs at the Boston players, and I'm like, it was my first time being in the stadium, and it's weird because if you're a Yankees fan, it feels like a family, and if you're the other team, it feels like you're like gonna get like either like jumped or tackled the whole time, which I'm like,
Right.
it's good and it's bad at the same time because it has like a curtain on your team,
Right.
which I'm like, everybody knows Yankees fans are probably one of the worst fan bases out of any sports
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
because they won't stop like
Absolutely. No, they're just
and-
relentless.
until they're right, which I'm not one of them because I know when my team's terrible because
Of course. You're not delusional.
we haven't been close to the World Series
Right.
for like the last 3 years or 4 years, and I'm like, the last time we had a good team was probably when I was like 7, when 2009.
2009. Damn, I was 21.
I'm like, the sad part is like when I was growing up, like I was born in 2002. they're all winning. Like
Right.
they were winning
No.
every single year when I was like 5.
I can't say that about any of the teams I like, so at least you're lucky that you can say you like the winners.
Yeah, true. But my dad got me into them, so.
There you go. My dad gave me the Mets, Jets, and Nets.
Oh.
We're not going to talk about the Jets. We're going to save time on that one.
I mean, are you rooting for the Jets this weekend?
Obviously, so my wife's a diehard Bills fan. I'm a Jets fan. Generally, we play for who does the yard work or the chores around the house. So I already accepted my beat of doing the dishes and vacuuming. And
I mean, hey, from like the last 2 weeks, you could have a chance of.
The Bills are terrible against Jacksonville. You can't lose to Jacksonville. Like, you can't.
See, well, I'm not blaming it on the refs, but when Mitchell Trubisky gets a unnecessary roughness and he's on COVID IR, how does somebody mess that call up and then they reverse 4 calls from the other team to the Bills and kept their whole first 2 drives going? I'm like,
I don't know, but you should never score 6 points against.
I'm not saying that. Like, there's no reason why we scored 6 points, but like, the first like 2 minutes, it's the most confusing game in the first 2 minutes because there's like 8 penalties in the first like 2 drives, and I'm like, some of these penalties just made no sense. And then their offensive guard moved the whole game, and I'm not gonna get into it because I could talk for like 4 hours about the officiating. I mean, you stick out your hip on a guy and give him a flag for that in the Sunday night game, I think it was.
Oh yeah, it's the Bears game.
Stupidest ref I've ever
Steelers,
seen.
Bears Steelers. I can't believe he did that. Stick his head up.
Just because that guy got cut by the Steelers and sacked their guy.
Yep.
So anybody in any sport after they get cut or like anything by their past team, if they have bad blood, is gonna do that. Didn't even taunt them. He just walked up to him and looked at him.
Yeah.
And it's not like you have like if you have like Lamar doing that to like the other team, like just looking at somebody or like some star player, they won't get flagged.
Right.
Like the Collinsworth doesn't even get fined for saying like inciting violence on Josh Allen, which I'm like, this guy blatant just said just twist his ankle and make it pop, and I'm like, for what?
Yeah.
I'm like, I get you're a Chiefs fan, but like your team sucks too. Like both of our teams are not the greatest right now. Like, but yeah, that's about it. Like about the whole. I think we might just end it here because
Cool.
we got a lot of.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I love
All
the topic. I love talking about everything else.
I could talk for days and hours about sports,
We
but
should have more time on this next time when I don't have to leave for a game.
I mean, hey,
We can do it again.
we could do it. I'm down to do it again. I have a good time.
Yeah, we can chop it up. Figure out any sports topics you want to talk about. Cover it all.
All right, sounds good. All right, this is gonna be a wrap, man. Have a good day.